And Morris Solicitors on a sunny Monday evening. Great to have you with us live on the Facebook page and in all the usual places that you listen to Pembrokeshire's Pure West Radio. And on the way tonight, we will talk Olympic Games. We'll go through another busy weekend of cricket and get ready for the start of a new Pembrokeshire football season. But of course, the first part of the show tonight does begin on a poignant note as we remember one of Pembrokeshire's finest ever sportsmen, former Wales and British Lions player Peter Morgan passed away in Littlehaven at the age of 65, and we will remember and celebrate Morgs on the show this evening. Gordon and Fraser knew him well. Also, we have with us this evening Senedd member for Carmarthen West and South Pembrokeshire, Sam Kurtz, and we'd love to hear from you as well with your own memories and tributes to a true Pembrokeshire legend. So get involved, leave us your comments and memories of Peter Morgan. You can comment on the page and we'll read those out as we go through tonight's show. So on that note, let's bring you Pure West Sport this Monday evening. Sam, welcome to the show. Great to have you with us. Thank you for your time this evening. Hi to you as well, Fraser. I'm going to go to Gordon first of all in the studio in Haverfordwest. And Gord, we've lost one of the greatest ever sportsmen Pembrokeshire has ever produced, and probably one of the biggest characters Pembrokeshire has ever produced as well.
Yeah, it's been a difficult week. We had Brian Hawkins last week who passed away. Peter Morgs, I was very close with him, as a lot of you know anyway. As a young kid, he was somebody I looked up to, and he inspired a lot of kids of our era to be the best they could. And we had a number of Welsh Youth internationals down to him, and also down to his brother Anthony, who actually played for the Welsh Youth as well. But Peters was one of Llanelli's finest ever rugby players. The partnership he formed with Ray Gravel for many seasons was probably one of the strongest centre pairings that had ever been seen down in Llanelli. And that was including Roy Bergers, who Peter replaced him and stood in instead of him for Graves with him. His finest moments were probably captaining the Scarlets in 1984, I believe it was. And also they beat the Australian touring side. But previous to that, they'd also beaten the New Zealand Maoris as well at Stradey Park. I remember that day well as well. But he was a very, very skillful player. He was known as a utility back. And it was probably, no disrespect to Morgs, but it was probably his downfall. They played him in so many different positions. I remember him being picked instead of, JPR had just retired and Morgs stepped in as fullback for his first international against Romania. And Wales actually won that game, but he never played a fullback again. I remember him playing in the centre as well, came on against Scotland, and he turned the game around there to beat Scotland. And he played against Ireland twice, home and away. But his legacy is second to none. We can talk about the game of being professional. It was amateur in Peter's day. He was a committed rugby player. He did a lot. He travelled back and forth Llanelli 3 times a week for over a decade. It was real commitment on a pro level, but as an amateur status. And he was always wanting to turn out for Pembrokeshire as well at senior level. He's very proud of his Pembrokeshire roots. And he was always just one of the boys as well. He never thought himself any bigger and better than anybody else, but he certainly was.
He was so down to earth. Fraser, a real giant of Pembrokeshire has been lost. And Gordon's tribute, I think, is moving, and I know Gordon, he was a great friend of yours, so I thank you for the words you've used there, and I'm sure his family will take so much comfort to hear you say that. He was an icon though, Fraser, wasn't he? But he was so down to earth. Whenever you came across him, he was always so bubbly, so bright, and you wouldn't know that he was such a great rugby player.
There were a few airs or graces about him, and Gordon just summarised him so brilliantly there. He'd always stuck with me, the story that Gordon told me once. And I could imagine it with him. He was on Gordon's sofa one week watching the first round of the Five Nations. It was then, of course, starting for Wales the next Saturday. I mean, and you could just imagine that, even at the height
And the
of his
following
career.
Saturday, back down, sitting down, watching the next game.
Well, we won't go into that, but the height of his, height of his career, they'd say he was so down to earth, and he was still the same. He didn't carry himself as if he was a man who was a British Lion and Welsh international. And actually, my abiding memory of him, it's interesting what Gordon says there, that he was professional before his time, because well into what would have been in his 50s, I used to train in the morning at the Hafforth Leisure Centre. He was training very hard in there every single morning. And often you go in at 7 a.m. and he'd been coming out, having been there when the doors were opening at 6. So, that side of the professional never actually left him. And it was really nice a couple of years ago, actually. His health had deteriorated slightly by this point, unfortunately, that he got the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Pembrokeshire Sports Awards, because it was thoroughly deserved.
Yeah,
he did. That was 2013, I think he got that award. Sam, evening to you, and you actually met Peter in all sorts of different capacities, but in 2017, you recalled this earlier today, when you were first elected to Pembrokeshire County Council, because of course post this amazing rugby career, his dedication to the county and to community service was immense, wasn't it? So you, I think, were just recapping what it was like to meet him as a councillor when you first got elected and to get to know him that way. What was that like?
Yeah, evening Ben, evening Fraser and Gordon. Quite unique when you go into County Hall newly elected and you're all this information comes at you, and then you've got Peter Morgan with this smile on his face coming around, introducing himself to all the new councillors, speaking to all the officers, just a happy, cheery individual who was just excited by all the new faces coming along, excited by the opportunity of serving his ward, his county council ward, which he loved, absolutely loved doing. And for me then, as a rugby fan, knowing Peter's rugby history and his credentials, being in awe of him, and being a little bit afraid to go up and say hello to Peter, which I never need not be, because Peter was so gracious and welcoming. And when I started mentioning rugby to him, he just regaled stories, and with no airs or graces, like Fraser said, completely humble. And Matthew Lamb, another gent who used to work in the council, didn't realise, and he shared this on his LinkedIn post, which I think was lovely, that he asked Peter if he played any sport, and Peter said, yeah, I played a little bit of rugby when I was younger. Just not wanting to lead into what his credentials were. And I think that's testament to Peter and the modesty and the humbleness that he has. And he was always smiling, quick with a joke, quick with a little bit of a finger point if you said something funny or something. He was on it. He was absolutely on it, and he was a joy to be around.
Sam, I went to County Hall years ago and interviewed him there, and he was like you said, always quick with a joke and very witty, very funny, great to be around in the short time I was with him and interviewed him. He gave the impression he didn't take it too seriously, but I don't believe that, and you'll probably be able to back this up. I think he took service to Pembrokeshire and to his ward and to the council really seriously.
Absolutely. He was incredibly diligent. He was incredibly passionate. He loved this area. As Gordon mentioned, he'd always been proud to play rugby for Pembrokeshire. Well, I think he was just as proud when he was elected chairman of Pembrokeshire County Council, representing his home ward as well. It was something that he took incredibly seriously, but in a way that was very welcoming and warm, and not standoffish, not us and them mentality of him being a county councillor and there being officers within county council. It was one big team mentality, everybody coming together. And what's been really lovely, and it's always difficult in these times, but and I hope the family are able to take some strength, is from the tributes that have been paid by people who knew him on Pembrokeshire County Council, who worked alongside him, and the sporting heroes who played beside him as well. Just the fondness that people hold Peter in their memories just is testament to the gentleman that he was.
I want to just talk about the British Lions, how that came about, and Gordon, Fraser, Sam, do chip in a bit here. Gord, maybe you can lead on this, because he got that call up in pretty unique circumstances when you look back, really, because he'd only played just a small number of games for Wales, and then we've remarked on the show before, it almost couldn't happen nowadays. A player would just be plucked out to go and tour with the Lions. What do you think he could? And when we've spoken to him about it in the past, could he almost take in how big that moment was when he got the Lions call up? Do you think?
Yeah, he did everything before he was 21, actually, Ben. His rise to becoming a British Lion happened very, very quickly. He came out of the Welsh youth setup, and as I said, replaced Roy Burgess as a centre, who was a British Lion himself, to play alongside Graves. So he just came onto the scene very quickly, and he showed a lot of promise and talent, and everybody could see it, and all the coaches there could see it as well. So he was drafted into the Welsh setup to train as, I believe, an 18-year-old, which is very young, coming into that setup. And it just, as I said, he made his first game in 1979 against Romania, replacing JPR. I mean, that's a big name in itself, isn't it? Yeah. And he played very well in that game. But he was an outside half coming out of the Welsh youth, but he often played 12 centre. So he seemed to be moved around a lot and shifted around, and it didn't help him one bit, really. Had he stayed in the one position, I think he would have had a lot more caps. And he was very unlucky at the time of getting injuries and things that didn't quite go his way in games as well. And lo and behold, but his form for Llanelli was incredible. He's an icon down in Stradey. Everybody loves him down there.
And Fraser, an icon at Stradey, as Gordon said, but certainly up there with the greatest sportsmen and women Pembrokeshire have produced. And just because of his backstory, Fraser, one of the most significant as well, I think, just because of how it came about.
100%, yeah. You're right in the middle of that debate, certainly when you talk rugby or sports people, representing the British Lions, Wales, Llanelli, tells you everything, doesn't it? And it's sense of humour as well. He had a moment when he would regale stories from it, and the story I actually can't repeat on here is the time he met the new editor of mine and Gordon at the Sports Awards.
You're going to anyway, though.
No, I'm not. I couldn't use the language, but she ended up taking it back anyway. But no, you're absolutely right, Ben. There's obviously people who have gone on to play for Wales, win more caps, but in terms of what he did at the time, it was unprecedented. Certainly from anyone from Pembrokeshire. Gordon might correct me on this. I believe he would have been the first British Lion from our county, or very close to. So it was from what he did at the time. As Gordon said,
Pembrokeshire born. There was a fella Nil who played for Pembroke many years ago, but he played for Cardiff. He was a prop. He was part of the Lions before Peter, but Pembrokeshire born. Peter was the first.
Yeah, and Gordy, he was great on this show. I think he's probably my favourite person we almost had on the show, and it didn't actually happen. Because do you remember you'd lined him up to come on live on a Monday?
Yeah.
And we'd had all the build-up, and all through the day you'd been messaging, yeah, I'll be there. Got to 8 o'clock, yeah, I'll be there at 8:15, no problems. Got to 8:15, and we make allowances because he's an ex-British Lion. Unfortunately, couldn't get his IT to work, I think. And he messaged you the next morning, sorry, Gord, I forgot. And we're like, that's fine, you can come on any time, Morgs. Right?
I'll give you a couple of little stories with Morgs, with me and him. I remember playing in the Aberystwyth Sevens with Llanelli, and we actually won the tournament. And they were giving grogs out, and you had a winning grog or a finalist grog, So we went home. I was delighted that it was my first trophy with Llanelli. And I got home and I opened my bag, took my grog out to have a look, and it said finalist on it. He switched it, hadn't he? I'd never had the winners one again, but that was Morgs. I just love that devilment about him, and I've still got that grog on my computer table now. It reminds me of what happened there. And also, we were running out of petrol one day, and he kept on turning the engine off and putting it into neutral, thinking he was saving energy so that we could get to the petrol station. There was all sorts of things that Morgs was up to, but he was great fun. Great fun.
Sam, in your current role as well, you obviously will see youngsters coming through, and there'll be Peter Morgans of the future come through this county as well. But his legacy, I think, will always remain.
Absolutely, and Pembrokeshire's got a really strong history of sporting talent, and maybe because we are on the far-flung western coast, maybe some of our sports stars don't get the accolades that they deserve just by being further away from professional football teams or rugby teams or wherever facilities might be. But when someone like Peter can do what he did at such a young age and show that actually if you've got that raw, unbridled talent, then you will shine through. There will be people out there watching, and there are always people, youngsters coming through the system in Pembrokeshire who have got dedicated parents ferrying them up to up the M4 for Swansea City training or whatever it might be. And so I think in the sort of sporting legacy that Pembrokeshire can be proud of. The fact that we've had someone like Peter Morgan, but now we've got someone like Jasmine Joyce just at the Olympics this evening rather, shows that we have a good conveyor belt. We should be very proud of what we do for a very small county, for one that's always punched well above its weight. We should be immensely proud of the sporting prowess that we've been able to deliver over the years.
And Sam, you will have seen it firsthand as well, and Gordon and Fraser have said as well that versatility he brought to his rugby, but also the fact he played rugby with a real smile on his face, whatever the level, he just seemed to enjoy it. And do you think he did that in the local politics scene as well? He did that with a smile on his face.
Oh, absolutely. And where he was sat when we were in County Hall was just to my right. And I could see him smiling away when things were happening and nudging whomever was sat next to him and having a bit of a giggle and a bit of a joke. But there was always a seriousness of delivery throughout it. There was a smile with how he was doing things, but there was a seriousness of understanding the responsibilities that he had. And what I found lovely, and I didn't know this picture existed, but the picture that BBC Wales have used of him in his Lions kit with a can of Fanta and just, I've got it on the laptop in front of me, just that smiling face, just encapsulates him, or how I remember him from County Hall days as well. And I think that's those characters. Sometimes in sport, in modern professional sport, we get people who are far too PR trained and who have gone through a system of just having lessons in how to approach the media rather than just being characters themselves. And I think Peter bucked that trend, or was unique in that sense. And other rugby players from Pembrokeshire, Gordon, Rob Evans, different people with characters and personalities that shine through that make them even more endearing.
I'm glad you touched on that. Sorry to jump in there, but I was going to come on to that. Is the modern system now, does it not allow for characters like a Peter Morgan? Because you have these appearances now, don't you, with children are farmed who have got potential farmed into academies at such a young age. They don't actually spend a lot of time in Pembrokeshire. I know the outlook has obviously changed with professionalism and everything. You don't get stories like someone playing for West or being on Gordon's sofa one week and playing for Wales the next. They were, back in those days, they would have been in Welsh camp for about probably 4 or 5 weeks beforehand. Do you think the current system, football and rugby, has maybe taken that away from a bit, like a Peter Morgan, a character who's one of the boys back home and yet can still be an international rugby player?
I don't know if it's fully taken it away, but what it's done, it's maybe made it a little bit more difficult for some people. So you think of Rob Evans, you think of Joe Marler in the English rugby camp, a personality there who has always tread the line of what's acceptable and not acceptable, especially
Cubby,
when,
of course.
Cubby as well, another unique individual who I was in university with, and fond memories of being in university with Cubby.
That's a weird,
and I think, but these are brilliant characters, and I think they bring something else. And if we're looking at marketing rugby, if we're looking at growing rugby as a sport, and rugby for me is always rugby and cricket are my two sports. And I'm always thinking, how can we really push rugby when we see sides going by the wayside in England, always talk about cutting regions from 4 to 3. We need to increase its saleability, and personality is part of that. If we have unique characters that are drawing in crowds on social media or TikTok or anything else like that, that's just important to the success of the game as the quality of the sport that they play. So let's not be too chasing the robotic players. Let's actually embrace the personalities that come with it, that have that wry smile, that cheekiness, the ones that will swap your winner's trophy for a runners-up trophy. Let's embrace that, because that's part of marketing a game that we all hold dear, and other sports as well. Let's not be ashamed of that. I think it's something that is a strength when we're looking at advocating for something that we love.
And I think we all hope across the county rugby clubs, boys and girls getting involved, the name Peter Morgan will endure for a long, long time. And that story of how he got that Lions call up back in the early 80s will always be one we look back on. And Gord, just a final one before we go to the break. Did he ever change, do you think, from that bloke you had on your sofa? Did going and playing at the top level, did it ever alter him? Was he always just your mate who you could chat to?
Yes, he was. He never altered one little bit, no matter what he did. He was a top man, top fella, and he'll be sorely missed throughout the county, not only by his rugby family, just the political family. Whoever he met, he always had time for people. Sam has hit the nail on the head there. He's a great character. We'll all miss Morgs.
I will say, good, listening to something Sam said there, I'm relieved that social media wasn't about in Morgs' day.
Oh my God.
I think Twitter could have got him into a bit of trouble.
Yeah, definitely. We won't go down there.
I think you might have got Gordon in a bit of trouble as well, to be honest. As well.
Yeah.
Listen, Sam, thank you very much for your time this evening. You're welcome on the show anytime. It's really good to hear from you as well, and great to hear Gordon and Fraser remembering a true Pembrokeshire legend. Tonight's show, we remember Peter Morgan on Pure West Sport.